IVM.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I'm Harshit Kukreja. I'm currently working as a research analyst at Takshashila Institution. Today I'll be talking with my colleague Megha Pardhi, who is working at TI. In today's episode, we'll talk about human trafficking. We started talking about human trafficking after China did its 2 sessions and a lot of issues were discussed. We were a little surprised by the similarities that China and India faces and by the differences. And we think we can learn a lot from their mistakes and their trips. So, Megha, how are you today?
Hi, Harshit. I'm good. What about you?
I'm good. So, first, can you tell the viewers what exactly is China's 2 sessions? I think we have been talking about 2 sessions from the last 2 podcasts, about 15 days.
Yeah. So China's 2 sessions are basically they're annual sessions. One is session of National Legislature of China, and another is it's called Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. So there are just 2 parallel sessions held parallelly. I kind of want to equate them to our sessions of Parliament, but it's not exactly the same. With Parliament, we have this upper house and lower house, but it's not the same in China. CTCC is not an upper house, but it's kind of a different house which acts as an advisory body. And NPC is National People's Congress, which is actual lawmaking body, even though it technically is just, called as a rubber stamp organization, because basically whatever is going to happen, it's kind of pre-decided, like which laws are going to be passed, what is going to happen. So agenda is set and everything is already decided by this Communist Party of China. So it is called a rubber stamp parliament. So basically these are the 2 sessions. They are generally held in first half around March, April at this time. And yeah, those are the 2 sessions.
Thanks. So, Megha, do you remember the video which went viral? I think that was a Chinese man who held a woman, who chained a woman. That was her husband. I understand that was from our last discussion. I understand that was the trigger for this change in trafficking of women and children laws policy in China.
Yeah. So what happened recently, like around in January, late January, a video emerged on social media where it was shown that there is a woman who was chained in a shed and she was being mistreated and abused. So that kind of went viral, and there was a lot of outcry on social media, and people started talking about the incident, and it kind of highlighted how women are being mistreated. Then later, more details came out, like as more people talked online and offline also. The details came out that that woman was from Jiangsu province and she was deemed mentally unstable. And there was some more horrifying details, like for example, it was reported later that she was trafficked, sold twice as bride, and she had given birth to around, I think, 8 children somewhere between 1998 to some years later. So this as the details kept coming, it kind of horrified people in large, and they started demanding action. So this was kind of trigger point. Later, more videos of similar incidents across different provinces also came out. For example, there was this Shanxi trafficking case where another man kind of made a video boasting about marrying this woman forcefully, And he boasted that he has kept her in an iron cage and how he's treating her. And somebody then anonymously reported him, and then that again became a sensation. So when these kind of incidents started to come out, it renewed a discussion on a lot of discussions actually, not just human trafficking, but also about child marriage, women's rights, and treatment of people in general, even including elderly.
So, from my understanding of how the system works in China, I was trying to draw a parallel between India and China. So, I believe in India, this is how basically laws are passed. Some people, some interest groups create some kind of pressure, then the lawmakers try and agree to that. And after a few years, the law is presented to the parliament and then it is passed. So in this case, I don't think we would have an answer, but was this because the Chinese leadership at the top, the party leadership at the top, thought this was horrifying, or the general public thought was this public pressure, or this is what the leadership decided that this was too horrific to continue?
Yeah, so little background first. So this trafficking laws, I mean, it's not the first time actually this type of issue has come forward. There are a lot of issues being resurrected in past that, human trafficking. There are a lot of cases of trafficking and abduction that had been there. There was already, civil societies working to, kind of build up pressure and also reunite families. So that was already going on. And there was also a law, actually, just few weeks before this incident of women in Jiangsu province came out. There was a draft law floated for public consultation. It was on basically human trafficking and women's rights. So that draft law was already in motion. Apart from that, around in 2000, last year, I think in 2021, around somewhere around this time only, around April, State Council had also launched a 10-year national action plan against abduction and trafficking. And this was third such national plan. So to answer your question, I wouldn't say that this, discussion in two sessions and proposed amendment in two sessions was only because of prayer pressure due to this incident. This trafficking has been issue for a long time, and there have been multiple attempts to address this issue and other issues which are related to human trafficking and women's rights. So that is already there. But yes, what happened was during this year, and this kind of, so see the timing of this issue, it came out late in January, but it picked up a lot of traction over February. And this year, this two session was just, in first week of March. So just few days before, and it was, fresh in people's and leaders' mind, this kind of uproar. So probably that was also a contributing factor towards there's a fresh in leaders' mind. For example, Keqiang, China's premier, he also addressed this issue in his opening address to National People's Congress. So that kind of, indicates how seriously this matter was being taken in a party. And probably also, since a lot of, discontent was already there in China or a lot of other issues, probably leaders didn't want to escalate this further. So, yeah.
So, are the new provision, the new clauses, the sort of addition in the law, the changes that were proposed, are they related to the etiology, the causality of this problem, or are they mainly focused on the aftermath? So, what exactly are the changes and what exactly are the additions?
So there are actually different measures being taken. So one of the law which I talked about, which is draft of which was circulated in December. So the changes in that law try to address underlying cause of gender inequality in education and employment and land inheritance. They also try to define what is exactly is a gender based discrimination. That law, it also supposedly will allow women to seek compensation upon divorce. So I would say that this is just to handle aftermath. I mean, and China handles aftermath very differently, by the way. So this is not the law is not just to address aftermath; it's also to address some underlying causes. And speaking about aftermath, this issue when it came out, the video. So after a while, after some inquiry was done and some procedure was done, and 17 officials were sacked from jails, and it included members of Communist Party of the local county. So basically, aftermath was very strict, and there was also censorship of the issue online.
What kind of causes do we see for basically human trafficking, especially women and children trafficking in China? Are they pretty similar to what we see in India?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's some issues, for example, trafficking, especially, of course, from poorer regions, and because of gender imbalance due to one child policy, and again, preference for boys, which is again same in India. I mean, India didn't have one child policy, but we do have preference for boys. And there is a large inequality and inadequate social services, especially in rural regions. So some of these issues are largely also similar to that of in India. And in India, also, reasons for trafficking are primarily the same. So, yeah, there is a similarity there.
So, bonded labor is a huge problem in India. Is it
Mhm.
that huge in China, or do we have a different breakup? Are the women basically trafficked due to other? Are they like made to marry people, or is that sex trafficking, or is it for labor purposes? Because a huge percentage of human trafficking in India is due to bonded labor.
Yeah, so before we go to China, can you tell me more about this bonded labor issue in India?
So estimates by various non-governmental organizations, international organizations say that around 80 lakh people. This is a very, well, estimates vary by a lot, but somewhere around 80 lakh to 1 crore people are in bonded labor in India. And our
Mm.
ministry says that from the Ministry of Labor and Employment says that it said this in Parliament in 2019-20 that they have only released around 3 lakh people from 1976 to 2019. So bonded labor is a huge problem in India, but we are not tackling it as such. And there are a lot of ways by which employers force employees into getting into this debt trap and sort of becoming bonded labor. The first thing is uh, a lot of stories came out of the tea growing regions of northeast of our country. Basically, Assam, there was a report which said that the reporters, the investigators, they went around to 50 farms, tea farms, and they found out that around 40% of the workers had daily expenditures exceeding their daily income. So they are earning in negative. So obviously they'll go into debt, and the expenditure is also forced by the employer. They charge you for letting you board, they charge you for food, they charge you for letting you have your salary, they charge you for each and everything they can. And this is how the bonded labor cycle starts. The second thing basically people do is, horrible people do is, they transfer your debt when maybe, for instance, a person dies, they transfer their debt to any person, to their wife, maybe to their son, maybe to their parents, and then try to continue the cycle. So this is how employers exploit their workers. First, they try to pay very low wages, or maybe make people work for free or negative income, and then they transfer that debt to their relatives so that they can continue this. The third thing people do is, this is, I'm talking about India specific reasons. There are
Mhm.
similar reasons, maybe I think what we'll find around the world. But the percentage of people who are into forced labor, what is called as Bandhwa Mazdoor, is quite high in India. And the third thing people do is they try to search for unemployed people in rural India or in urban centers where people are not able to get work. They loan them some money out, they give them advances, and then they take the people to some other place. Then they start charging them exorbitant interest. They do not allow people to leave. They do not give the salaries that they promised them. So these are the three ways in which people keep their workforce, people keep other people as bonded labor.
Okay, so as you described, some of these issues do happen in China also. And that is, although, I mean, I won't categorize it as trafficking strictly, trafficking in the sense which is addressed in this law and how it was discussed in the two sessions. But there is an issue of forced labor, and it is very sensitive issue, by the way, even in China. And the reasons are similar to what you mentioned, like withholding their salaries and forcing them to work in difficult conditions and very low wages, that kind of, or forcing domestic work and that kind of thing. But the primary reason of the things, human trafficking being discussed in two sessions this time was the women's rights issues and how women are treated like an object and then trafficked. So that was one of the primary reason. And the one similarity which not exactly similar probably, but there was this, it reminds me of the issue which some of the cases which I have heard that even in India, in some places, girls are kind of, forced to marry or, sold as a brides in villages where women are not found, or there is scarcity of women. I did read some news reports a few years ago of similar cases happening in India, and this case in China reminded me of that. So probably this issue of gender imbalance and preference for boys is similar in two countries and has caused similar kind of issues.
So in India, at least we have certain kind of, we do not take bonded labor, at least in laws and at least in policy, as we tackle other people who are trafficked for sexual exploitation or for other reasons. So there's basically differentiation in approach to bonded labor and to other people. How does China do it? Do they have a similar approach or do they follow something?
So unfortunately, as of now, I'm not aware of this regulations on bonded labor separately. But there was one issue which was very famous, kind of, among tech workers, which came into light a few years ago. So there was this whole movement about. So basically, crux of the issue is that the tech companies in China, they force people to. They kind of expect people to work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and 6 days. And this became known as 996 issue, and there was a lot of discussion and debate around that also. And it's actually illegal in China, but technically you won't be like, so you won't be forced to do this, but then if you don't do it, then you won't be promoted. That kind of tactics are kind of employed. So it became a culture. So technically not related to bonded labor, but this did remind me of that incident. Yeah, again, I'm sorry, I talked much about the bonded labor issue separately.
That's all right. So this is somewhat similar to the stories we hear about Japanese work culture.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, in Japan also, there is this huge culture of overworking, and there are literally deaths due to overworking. In fact, even in China, this issue of 9 and 6 kind of gained traction after one of the, I think, delivery partners or some worker, gig worker, basically, he died due to overexertion. Yeah, so that. But you coming back to this approaches to human trafficking, I'm not sure if this is included in human trafficking issue.
Yeah, so yeah, in India also, I think this cultural change which Japan has made and they have normalized these working hours, this is something that is also seen in the migrant or the unskilled labor market. And so people have sort of like accepted this is how it goes and this is how maybe sort of how construction sites work, or this is how when you go to metropolitan cities or cities, this is how you the work you get, this is the conditions you get, and this is you have to accept it. And government, so I recently read the State Department of US makes a lot of reports. They give sort of like ratings. It's like tier 1 to 3 and further ratings to countries on how they've performed on human trafficking per se. So this is the latest report I read. It was 2021. So the 2021 report, they had a positive outlook on what the government is doing. Obviously, we are like very far as compared to what we should be doing. But they said there's some kind of effort, but the reporting is very low in bonded and other sort of forced sort of human trafficking. One thing they pointed out was the government gave 100 crore this was 2020, 100 crore all over the country. Indian government gave 100 crores to set up women health decks in around 10,000 police stations. So a lot of them were set up, but they were not that efficient. A lot of policemen thought that postings to these sort of women only, or there's a thing called anti-human trafficking units. So the people who were posted to anti-human trafficking units thought that they were sort of a punishment posting. So Indian government is also doing some things, and it's going in a better way. But I don't think we are making any large law changes, policy changes. These are small interventions which are going as I think we're not doing anything as big or as changing as China is doing.
So there are no profound changes. That's what you to indicate.
Yeah, there's
I
a
mean,
positive trend.
just to address basics or address cause of human trafficking.
So causality is not being addressed. They're trying to address the aftermath, but there are also problem with Indian commercial sex laws. There are also problem with the implementation of laws.
Okay, so I mean, there is some attempt in India, but again, it does not address a lot of issues. I get it, but I won't say that even in China, that all this, it's being handled at a profound level, or all the issues are being addressed. Because even in China, there are a lot of discontent that even though this law is being discussed, and even though state council has this, plan in action, or they have vowed to take stricter actions, but they don't address what actually needs to be done. I mean, for example, when this woman was rescued, after the video came out, there's some issues like where she's going to stay, and how will she survive. And so basically, how the women can be empowered like after they're rescued, that kind of issues are not being handled. And some of the social and justice activists and feminist activists in China have highlighted, these issues, that even though they're not on surface, a lot is being done, and it is being projected that government is doing a lot, but basic issues are still not being addressed. So there is still a lot of discontent there.
So this is the same case in India. Obviously, we have state-run and NGO-run sort of halfway homes where people go and rescued victims go, and they should be given rehabilitation. They should be helped out with food. They should be helped out in upskilling them. But that is not the case. Recently, when the pandemic started, this was some data from one of the southern states. I think it was Tamil Nadu. I think it was Tamil Nadu. So they had around 40,000 children in rescue homes. And when the pandemic started, the government wanted to reduce the population of rescue homes because everybody was nervous. Nobody wanted to have so many people in not so good settings together. So they tried to push as many children back to their homes as possible. And the irony is, a lot of children who were pushed back, their parents were the ones who sold them into human trafficking. So there is not a very good attempt being made at solving the causality. And I think that is something to do with our limited state capacity and our enforcement capacity and basically part in our country. A lot of these problems could be solved. I think the numbers would decrease if we attain, at least we try to eliminate the very poor and uplift them. So, Megha, before we proceed, I think it's time for a short break.
Yeah.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss Zakir Khan's biryani brand and the PVR Inox merger. On The Longest Constitution, Priya talks about the legal aspects of cow slaughter in India and how it affects the livelihoods of butchers and other communities. On Big Talk with Tiny Humans, Devi Shobha and Megha share tips on how we can motivate our kids to do better without being a nag. On Hansavani, here's the story Zehen Mein Atka Hua Sa Kuch. It explores the history of the bloodbath and tragedy brought on by religious conflicts. And on Say No to Drama, Chetna decodes the concept of green flags at work and the ones you should look out for. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on, including the one you're listening to us on now. And also, please do check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels. They're all available on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to help us understand you, the listener, better, and how you like our shows, how you respond to the advertising, and so on. We'd really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It's at ivmpodcast.com/survey. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to All Things Policy. I'm Harshit. I'm talking to Megha about human trafficking in general and about China's policies and what India is doing. So, Megha, back to you.
Yeah. So now that you mentioned how, parents were themselves who sold children into trafficking, this reminds me of one of the discussion which is going on in China, that the law should be changed so that the buyers and traffickers, both of them should have equal punishment, or, either even the buyers should also have more punishment. Like, for example, currently, according to current China's laws, buyers get 3-year maximum jail term, and traffickers get five can get anywhere from 5 years to life sentence, and they can also get death penalty in extreme cases. So since there is very less jail term or very less punishment for buyers, the discourse is that it does not deter buyers. So if there is a lot of punishment for both traffickers and buyers, probably that will act as a deterrent.
So, buyers are not like booked under various actions in which you are forcibly putting someone in shackles if you are depriving someone of liberty. That would be there, right?
Yeah, so basically, whatever is the law, it's just punishment to actually buy a human being is literally just 3 years, maximum 3 years. And I think it's way less for, kind of heinous crime that is. So that doesn't act as a deterrence.
Yes. On a different note, there were reports which said death penalty does not deter a lot of crimes and that does not work. You mentioned death penalty. So I
Yes.
think that we'll discuss some other time. But obviously,
That
you
is,
cannot. Yeah, the proportionality of crime to its punishment is, I don't know how, if your aim is to improve society, how viable is that? Yeah, so I'm just rambling, coming back to the point. So, Megha, we talked about China, we talked about India. So, what do you think in general could be a sort of takeaways? How can we improve? Should we like make new laws? Should we streamline our ex- existing ones? Should we put money somewhere? Should we put money in education? What should we do?
I think immediate, starting point would be to actually implement whatever we have more, precisely, I would say. I don't know the law term for this, but it should be implemented properly. I do believe that a lot of laws and measures in India are very good, but they are not implemented as effectively as they should be. And then second thing is the underlying causes like inequality and gender imbalances and, these kind of things which or supplement which kind of increase intensity of such crimes. I don't think they can be solved just by law. A lot of effort into educating people and raising awareness and a discussion, civil discussion on these topics has to be there. Unless and until then, it won't. I just believe that it probably won't be addressed.
Talking about reforming, about like implementing existing laws, I think the laws regarding bonded labor have to change. And the culture around the concept of bonded labor has to change. And basically, work culture and what you expect from the employer and what you as an employee should be made to do, should be expected to have to change. But yeah, I think we're at least 10, 15 years from that point where we can say that we have pulled a lot of people out of poverty. And that too, when we improve our economic trajectory, which has not been going good from a few years.
Yeah, these things are happening in China even after they have pulled a lot of people out of poverty. So, of course, poverty is one of the reason, as I said. But even this is kind of this is not a factual kind of observation, but this is just my personal opinion. Even if you're poor, that doesn't entail that you can just, buy a woman and treat her like an object. Basically, I'm speaking this from the issue which kind of raised this discussion. The way that woman was tied and chained and she was sold, not just once, but twice. And probably there are a lot of women being sold across India and China like this. I don't believe that poverty forces you to do that. I believe that it's just, some inherent, I don't know, some inherent morally corrupt.
There's also the poverty
Yeah.
sends the women to, or somebody else takes advantage of the person
Yeah.
of the victim's poverty.
That is one of the reasons that poverty might force women to take such action, or maybe women's parents to sell their kid. But
All
yeah, there.
a lot of these transactions, they involve a lot of deceit. You're not told that you are being sold. It's said that you are getting a loan. At least on what I've read, it's like you are getting a loan on your salary, and whenever you are taking to a different place, you are told that, oh, you are sold. So this is not a job. You are sold as a bride, or you are sold as a sex worker. And you will have to do what they say.
Yeah. So of course, there are a lot of nuances in such cases. And, it's good that we discussed this today. And such issues are inherently very complex. And, even when making policies, you have to consider a lot of these issues and have a nuanced approach to policy making. So for our listeners, since we're wrapping up, for our listeners, if you'd like to learn nuanced approach to policy analysis and what to consider and how to basically, do a good policy or be a good policy maker. Applications for Takshila's public policy courses are now open. The graduate certificate in public policy, it's a 3-month course, and there are 3 different streams to choose from. One is defense and foreign affairs, technology and policy, and then there is advanced public policy. You can visit our website for more information.
Thank you, Megha, for the brand integration.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody.
Okay, Megha, it was a very informative discussion. Hope it leads to further discussions down the line and maybe some changes we would all like to see. Thanks for listening to us, listeners, and thanks, Megha, for being here.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa Vaisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.
Working Monday to Friday glued to your chair making you feel dull? Worry not. Get your 5-minute weekly dose of travel around the world with postcards from nowhere. Join me every Thursday as I explore the strange, obscure, and fascinating parts of the world and bring out facets of travel you may not have thought of before. You can find us on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.